Okay, so welcome everyone. I am going to get started. We are recording this just for anyone who's tuning into the replay. I love that we can just share this with people afterwards and everyone can watch on their time. But for those of you who are joining live, hello, welcome, thank you. And for everyone who's watching this afterwards, thank you also for tuning in. So, today we are talking all about boundaries, and I definitely geek out about boundaries. I love talking about boundaries, and I have really seen how boundaries have helped create so much more freedom in my life. So that's sort of the lens that I approach this webinar with is kind of get in the spot where you see boundaries as a gift and a way to feeling more free and in control of your own life. And that's at work and at home. Most of what we're going to be chatting about today does have more of that work lens, but everything that we talk about can always be applied to home as well. So I say I love talking about boundaries. I love talking about boundaries now. Now that I understand what boundaries are and how they've improved my life and just make things so much easier. But that wasn't always the way. I had to really reshape what I thought about boundaries. And because I was raised being told something very different, even in work, I was raised in a work culture that didn't really have boundaries or had some really strong beliefs on why not to have boundaries. So I'd love for anyone who's listening live, and if you're at home listening to this, like watching the replay, maybe even just like take a bit of a pause at this point and think about what do you currently believe about boundaries? And if you're open to it, pop it in the chat. Um, I'd love to know kind of in the fly what your thoughts are. But I'll tell you a little bit about what I thought and what many of my clients who I work with have shared with me and what their initial thoughts on boundaries are. So, a lot of them have shared that they see boundaries as really restrictive. So, we sort of attach that word boundary like the word diet. And immediately when you hear diet, you think restrictive, like we're holding back, we're not allowed to eat something. But really we're all on a diet, right? We all have a daily diet every day. Everyone's diet looks different. And that's the same with boundaries. Like yeah, Holly, boundaries totally feel like diet. And that's the thing that we feel that it's restrictive, like we're taking something away. A lot of people, and I think Jen, you shared in the chat that you're going to be missing out or it's restrictive, putting off or disappointing people. Yeah, a lot of people think that boundaries make them seem unavailable, that they're rude. I've even had people say that they seem mean when they set boundaries. Say maybe more like in personal life, when you set boundaries, you feel mean, like you're hurting people. Uh, Boundaries may make you feel that you're going to miss out on opportunities. This is a big one that I hear from my clients often is that they're scared that they're going to miss out on opportunities, specifically work opportunities, that you might get in trouble or seem like you're unwilling to do the work. You're not a good team player, or on the flip side, as a leader, that you're not a supportive leader. This is a big one. A lot of leaders don't have boundaries because they feel that they're not giving enough to their team. Yeah. And Leslie makes a good point that boundaries have been blurred through COVID because, especially for those who've working from home or you have a hybrid, you don't know when to shut off, right? We've just let it all go. That work life harmony that we were all going for just became like smashed together. It's just like just life. Or that boundaries might hold you back, that you might miss out on things. And that boundaries were something for you to have and others to follow. And what I have learned and seen, and maybe you can all relate, is that when you believe these things, you tend to then not set boundaries or be a little fluid with your boundaries, not really settling on having them. And what that leads to is saying yes to more and more projects, somebody going off on maternity leave or someone taking a sick leave. And can you do this? Yes, I can. Can you pitch in? Yes, I can. Can you do? Yes, I can. And you just become, yes, I can. And you're taking it on more and more. And you don't even realize you're doing it, but you don't know how to pause and really consider if this is what you want. You say yes to social events that you maybe don't want to go to. I will say COVID was a little bit of a gift and getting to delete a lot of things from my calendar. But saying yes to all those social events, excuse me, especially as we're now coming back into things. Um, yes to that extra meeting. No, I know I don't have a meeting with you, but can I just sneak in here? Yes. And you say yes to all of these things when you're already booked solid, right? You're not really sure where the time's going to come from. You end up working extra hours with probably no recognition because you've kind of done it to yourself, no recognition or appreciation. And so it makes you feel unvalued or underappreciated. You become overwhelmed. And my favorite that I'm absolutely formally recovering from is busy being busy. Anyone else relate to that? I don't know what I'm busy doing, but I'm busy. I'm just busy wearing that badge of honor. And, I've definitely dropped that and I try and remove the word busy from my vocabulary now. But, we're just busy. We're busy being busy. How are you? I'm busy all the time, busy. So, and then I also find a lot of my clients have been building up resentment towards their leaders or their colleagues or people in their lives who maybe have really good boundaries. And they're like, oh, how did you say no to that? Teach me. Or I'm jealous that you were able to do that. Or you're building up resentment for people who are crossing your boundaries. You feel that they're crossing your boundaries, um, and just constantly assigning you more, asking more of you because they don't know you have a boundary. Because let's be honest, you don't have one. You don't have one yet. Um, and then we become a little, I like to call it emotionally irresponsible. We snap a little bit more. Maybe we go home and vent a little bit more, or we even waste so much time with our colleagues, whining and moaning and venting and all of those things that just generates more of the same. So we end up becoming less productive. Okay? And it's all really because we don't truly have boundaries. And a lot of us are just scared to set boundaries. When I work one on one with my clients, and maybe some of you on this call can resonate. When you realize that you struggle defining or setting boundaries, that what's it really coming down to? Right? What's that root cause of why you don't feel comfortable setting boundaries? Or you think you have boundaries, but they're constantly being crossed by other people. Does that resonate with anyone? You have boundaries and lots of people cross them. Yeah. Okay. Seeing some head nods there. Holly saying yes in the chat. Okay. So we spend, in the time that I spend with my clients, we spend a lot of time on boundaries, really being intentional with how we explore where we need boundaries and finessing your boundaries that you currently have. And this tends to be a place where when you can tune in, you can have some of the best wins It's like those small little tweaks that make the biggest difference, right? And I'll give you a couple of examples because I definitely lived in the category of I thought I had boundaries and I was constantly ticked off at other people for crossing my boundaries. I'll say like even clients, I would say like how dare they cross my boundary? How dare they? And what I realized, so one example, I had a boundary of I'm not working on the weekend. And then my phone rings and it's a client. I answer the phone and I'm ticked off. Like, how dare they call me on the weekend? Da, 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 da. And then I talk to them and I hang up and I'm rattled. They cross my boundary. The challenge is that I answered the phone. I did that. Right? I answered the phone. They can call. I answered the phone. Or, when my son, doesn't go to bed on time, it's like, oh, come on, my boundary. It's bedtime. Then I'm not talking to you about this again. And then I engage in the conversation and I negotiate and we do the thing, that dance. And then I'm frustrated with him because he crossed my boundary. But it's my boundary. People are going to push, right? And especially too, I find like at the end of the day, I was the common denominator. I was the one that was participating. So when you set a boundary and then you participate in the crossing of the boundary, that's when it really is like that gut punch, right? You're like, oh, I'm mad and I'm going to project it on my client, or I'm going to project it, my disappointment and frustration on my son or whatever, for them crossing my boundary, but I participated in it. I answered the phone or I checked the email after hours or I said yes to the meeting that I didn't want to do. And I'm the one that's participating. So a lot of that frustration and that projection of anger or frustration or resentment on other people, I'm going to say right here, that's unfair. What we're really disappointed in is our participation in that. And the real work comes from realizing that boundaries are yours to set, yours to communicate, and yours to hold. And that's the hard part when it comes to boundaries, is really holding them in that uncomfortable place where you might have to say no to someone. And that is okay. And what I've noticed, it takes a lot of really strong self-leadership. It is your work. It is not other people's work. It is your work. And I'm going to go over some steps on how to actually set boundaries, but I will tell you that in the work, I have realized that it really does prevent so much resentment towards other people. And it requires you to have like a really great self-compassion, because we don't want to resent other people or ourselves. So focusing on like having that self-compassion that we are human and you're probably going to slip up. I'm probably still at times going to negotiate bedtime or one extra cuddle, or I'm probably going to still every now and then say yes to that meeting because, oh, it might really be something important. And I might regret it. And I might be like, oh, Ashley, why did you let that boundary go? And then I just set it again and keep going. And that's where a lot of the work comes. So, for me, it's given me a really great approach to realistically understanding what I have capacity for in my day. Boundaries have given me a lot of good insight on what I truly want to spend my time doing. Right. And I get it. We all work. And there are things that at work you're like, I really would rather not do this. However, that's not just how we set boundaries. We don't just say, no, thank you. This piece of my job description, I'm just not going to do it anymore. That's not setting boundaries, right? But the pieces that are really, I guess, sucking your time and energy that you're participating in that don't feel aligned with what you want to be doing, like saying yes to that extra social event or having somebody use this as my mother-in-law just shows up unannounced at my house, like set a boundary with that. There are places to do it. And it has given me a lot of insight on what I truly have capacity for and what feels aligned with where I want to go. So, does saying yes to that additional social event make me feel good and help me, check off something that I really want to do? Like, do I really want to network with these people? Do I want to grow my business? Do I want to give back to my community this way? You know, I'm very, very intentional now instead of just reacting and saying yes to everything. And now, when I participate in things, people can know that when I am there because I truly want to be there. I'm not there with budding resentment. And I think that that's a huge difference because then I show up differently as well. And it also helps me be so much more productive. So, as a leader as well, setting boundaries with my team, I am so much more productive and they are so much more productive because we all know what each other is supposed to be doing. And I hold those firm boundaries. Um, I use this often as I'm not just going to drop everything all the time to approve or review things that come to me. I have time set in my calendar for doing that work and it's communicated. And that's when I approve things. So if it's coming to me, that's the time I've carved out to do that. And it helps other people be a lot more productive on hitting those deadlines and hitting those goals because that's when I'm available to do it. But I found when I was dropping everything to answer every email and approve everything and edit things, I was a very distracted leader and I was being pulled away from my work. So coming back to very aligned, intentional, why am I doing this? And the other big piece now is understanding again that boundaries are mine. Boundaries are mine, and I have to communicate them. If you don't communicate your boundaries, you're really just hoping that there's a lot of mind readers out there. And I haven't really met one yet. So, as much as we try, you think you really know someone, we cannot read other people's minds. And asking them to read ours is also unfair. So I have 5 steps to creating a boundary that I'm going to go over. And really, these are some key steps that when I started really taking a close look at where I needed boundaries in my life, this is what I hit. And again, you can dig a lot deeper into this and get really curious about why does this feel uncomfortable for me? What do I need to untell myself? Oftentimes, in any sort of personal or professional development, there's a bit of an unlearning we have to do. And even yesterday, when I was in a training, a corporate training, some people said to me, like, but we've been doing it this way for so long. How do we go backwards? And I don't look at it as going backwards. You're starting now, and that's okay. You may not have had boundaries, but it's okay to start one now. And my other piece of advice is don't set 62 on day one. Start with one. Start with one boundary. When we bite off way more than we can chew with anything, any new habit, we tend to not be successful because it's too much too fast. And we want to encourage baby steps here. And you want to finesse that muscle that you haven't been using. Okay. So, actionable steps. Step one. First, you want to consider, where do you need a boundary? So, if anyone's willing to share right now, pop it in the chat. But if you're listening to the replay, where do you need a boundary? And sometimes you just have to, like, even just feel it in your body. There might be a visceral, like, I need to not check my phone. I need to stop. Yeah, I know, Jen, you popped it in there about you have that problem with donors that they send you, I have to meet with you right now because their gift won't be there tomorrow. I guess. I don't know. It's so important. No email check after 5 or before 9 a.m. Love that, Carm. So that's a boundary you need. Call me when I'm on vacation. Yeah. Okay. This is great. Email boundaries. Okay. A lot of people have email boundaries and time off, Holly. Yes. Holly and I are working together on the time off piece. So, where do you need a boundary? And how is it going to make you feel when you set this boundary? Okay. Think about that. Like, what do you want? What's the feeling you're going for? Is it freedom? Is it just like peace? Is it starting your day just untethered from your phone so that you can start your day with intention? Like, be really clear. Why do you want this boundary? What's it going to do for you? And then, second, you got to create that boundary. Right? Yeah, I love that. Balance, control, being intentional. Yeah. So create the boundary. And again, as I say, start with one. Okay. Start with one boundary because we're new at this. So if it's, setting certain hours that you're going to check your phone, that's one boundary. Not checking your phone before 9 a.m. or after 5 p.m. Okay. That's how you're going to do it. Now, build that habit, right? We want to build that habit to be successful. Write out your boundary. Write it out. Put it somewhere because we have a lot in our heads. Or maybe it's just me, but there's a lot going on often in there. I have a lot of thoughts every day. And if I need to write it out, I need to put it somewhere. So let's even just say that I'll just use it as the example, not checking your phone before 9 a.m. Maybe you have a sticky note that you tape on your phone that says, do not check before 9 a.m. And then after 9 a.m., you can take that sticky note off. It's like you're personally unlocking your phone. And then it goes back on there at 5. Do not check this again till 5 or 9 a.m. What do you need to do? You need to have it written out and put it somewhere that's going to help you come back to yourself and remember that you've set this. Sometimes I even send myself a little voice note like, hey, Ashley, it's you. Remember, you're not going to do this. Or find an accountability partner. Find someone you can trust that you can say, hey, I'm new, trying to set boundaries. Can you just like check in on me? Here's what I don't want to be doing, or here's the boundary I want to be setting. Can you just like check in on me and see how I'm doing? Again, we're not looking for shame or guilt or any of the other feelings that make us feel like we're not doing a good job at this. It's just loving accountability, right? So write down this boundary, be really clear on what it is, and keep it simple, right? So don't make it an overly complicated, not going to check my phone before this time unless it's this person and only, on the third Sunday of the month. Like, keep it simple because the simpler it starts, the more likely we have of being able to follow through on it. Okay. And then here's the piece that lots of people skip. Okay. This is the important part. Communicate your boundary. Awkward, feels uncomfortable, it's difficult. Communicate your boundary. Communicate your boundary. Like, who needs to know this boundary? So, who is it important that they know this is your boundary? And because it can't be a secret, right? When our boundaries are secrets, they're not effective. People will continue to just cross them because they don't know, right? You likely cross people's boundaries often because you don't know that they had a boundary. You didn't do it on purpose. You're not trying to like cause havoc in people's lives. You just didn't know. And when somebody says to you, like, hey, I actually don't accept meetings after this time, do you get really upset and freak out on them and say it's unacceptable? Like, how dare you? No, you just say, oh, awesome. I didn't know. When would be a better time to meet then? How about this time? But when somebody does, when you don't know someone's boundary and just like, no, I'm not taking that meeting. Oh, all right. It's a little more difficult. So, who do you need to tell and how do you want to communicate it? You know, if it's not checking your email, would it be hugely difficult to set a daily out of office or email notification that says, this email is quiet from 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. every day. When I check my emails at 9 a.m., I will respond to you at that time. And then you don't actually even have to tell, like, you don't have to verbally communicate it. It's there. So that's a way to communicate it. You're going on vacation and you're not answering your phone when people call you. It's amazing. We have this thing on our phones called call display. So we know that it's not our mom's calling. So, or if it is, maybe your boundary is, I'm not talking to my mom on vacation. As a mom, that's hurtful. Don't do that. But you can set boundaries like that and set a voice, like a out of office on your phone, like we all voicemail, like, hey, I have, yeah. So Jen, you have a work phone and a personal phone. I would turn that work phone off on vacation. That's the boundary. That's how you follow through on it. Turn it off. The other piece that, especially for work, okay, we have a lot of people that maybe we need to let know that we're on vacation. Sometimes it's easy to just like slip away, take a day here, a day there. It's fine. But when you're going away, let your managers know I'm going to be off on vacation next week. Just a reminder, my vacation time is next week. I will be unavailable. If there's anything you need from me before then, please reach out by noon on Friday, because if they give you something big Friday at noon, can't do anything with it. You can send something to any major donors or clients or accounts that you have. Hey, everyone, just a heads up, I'll be going away on vacation. If you need anything from me, I'll be checking email until noon on Friday. Otherwise, here's this other fantastic person who can help you. Or if you're like me and you work on your own, just say, I'll talk to you in a week, right? The world isn't hopefully going to end me going away for a week. So communicate it. I will be unavailable. If someone said that to me, I would fully respect that because I would have enough of a heads up. Like, okay, anything I need to wrap up with them, I've got a week to do it. And then I'll just push everything else until they're back. I do not need to call them while they're on vacation. Right? And you can then, it's up to you to follow through with it. So figure out, is it Face-to-face, you need to communicate this boundary. Is it in your email signature, right? Maybe it's in your email signature that says, here's our hours, right? Businesses have hours. They build it right in. It's on their website. It's in their email signature. It's everywhere. You too can build it in. Email bounce backs, put a sign on your door. So if anyone works in an office and you have people who constantly pop into your office, I know this is a big one for a lot of leaders who want to be available to their team. You have a open door policy because this is what we were raised to believe made a good leader. It's really distracting when people constantly pop in to your office, and putting a sign on your door that says, I'm working, like it's kind of like your version of a bounce back email. It's okay. Give yourself permission to close your door, right? Give yourself permission to say, I'm not available. What I am working on right now matters too. I had a leader who really embodied this, and I respected her so much for it. She would leave an hour every day for her open door time. The rest of the time, unless she was in like she was in meetings or doing things, her door was closed. And she was so friendly, so open-minded. She was a lovely person. And she closed her door. And I respected her so much for that. And I also knew that if I really needed her from whatever time it was, that's when I could pop by. It also empowered me to solve my own problems sometimes, right? So sometimes those things that we think our team needs from us and we're so important, they can solve their own problems. And what a gift we give them when we let them solve their own problems, right? We're actually doing more for them. So consider it. Like, even for me, I have a lot of different clients. So a lot of my boundaries are communicated in my contract, right? So just list them out there. What are you open to doing? What are you not open to doing? What deadlines, right? Deadlines. Got to hit the deadlines sometimes. And there's not always going to be extensions. Can't always work that way. So, taking all of that into consideration, the communicating your boundary piece is a critical step so that people understand and hear and learn what your boundary is. They still may try and push it. They still may knock on your door and say, I know you're busy, but the next piece is the reinforcing and holding your boundary. So, communicating your boundary, followed by now having to reinforce the boundary. The boundary that you set for yourself on not checking your phone or not checking, while you're away, really the only person, and this is hard, really the only person you end up disappointing is yourself. And that's why I say we need to have that self compassion to say, okay, you know what? It was 8:50 and I checked my email, right? I'm not going to punish myself all day. Just reset it and start again tomorrow, right? We only truly fail when we fully give up on something, right? It's just a bump. And we have to have that self compassion. Now, when someone knocks on your door and says, I know, but I'm sorry, I'm working on something. You'll have to come back at whatever time your open door time is. Thank you. No, I'm sorry. I told you when I'm available. You'll have to check back then. It's it takes practice, everyone. I get it, but you have to reinforce it, because if you let one person in, you then have to restart your boundary. And And especially when we're undoing a lot of, oh, this is how I've always done it. So starting a closed door or starting a no meetings after this time or not working on weekends, like whatever it is, when you participate in it, um, you're you're letting that boundary go. You're letting that line push a little bit. And I get it, there's always emergencies. Our boundaries are not meant to be so rigid that we can't move, but they're also there to serve us. And our boundaries, I always see it as like doing future me a good service. And that's really important, right? I matter too. My time is important as well. And I'm going to be a much better leader when I am able to focus on my work as well. I'm going to be a much better support or coach when I'm coming at it from a very present moment. Distracted leading is really a challenge. You're likely going to have to repeat things several times to me if if I'm distracted and, you know, and I'm trying to pay attention to you. So Jen, you just said something that's worked for me is saying, "Sorry, I'm not available then." Yeah, I'd push it like one step further and cut out the sorry. We don't have to apologize for our boundaries. We don't have to apologize for our boundaries because that's almost like you feel shame. I'm sorry. No, I am not available at that time. However, I'm available here, 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 and here. That's okay. Excuse me. So, again, especially at work when you have team members that need something from you or you have donors, it's like, we fall into the trap of, oh, but it's an emergency. Is it? Like, honestly, if there's heart surgeons on the call, for sure, I get it. Like, maybe it is an emergency. But, somebody wanting our time, it's like, your lack of preparation does not make my emergency, right? Or I just need this quick approval. Well, time switching or task switching from thing to thing actually takes something like 7 minutes to truly shift from one task to the other. So you think about every time somebody just needs to pull you quick, 7 minutes plus however long it takes, right? And then 7 minutes to get back in. So when you're feeling that brain fog or like, why am I not being so productive? Or how come I can't just get into this? It's likely because you're popping and or people are pulling especially I think for some of you on the call, I need you, right? You can relate to that. I need you. That's a big one that like pulls at my heartstrings. It's like, oh wow, makes you feel so important, right? It's like they need me. I know White Eagle, this resonates with you as a healer, right? Yeah, I know. Doesn't want to be let people down, but I need you. It's like, okay, but I'm still doing this. And if you really need me, here's when I'm available. Here's when I have space and capacity to truly be there and be present for you. Right? You show up so much better for other people when you have the capacity to do that. Right? And, boundaries can look really, really different to lots of different people. And they come in all sorts, shapes, sizes, and you may feel that you can't set boundaries, right? And especially with other people, especially with really big personalities or your leader at work or whomever it is. you feel that you can't. So this is where I say start with something, start building up that muscle, start trusting yourself that you can. Start with something for yourself, whether it is the email checking or, going to bed, at a certain time, right? I love a good bedtime routine, but I have, that's a boundary for me. I really need my 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. I know this about myself. I do not do well on little sleep. So it's a boundary, but it's also a gift to myself. So think about kind of going back to what do you really need in your life and how are you going to implement it? How are you going to communicate it and how are you going to reinforce it? And then finally, going back is evaluate it. Is this working? Has setting this boundary helped me feel the way that I intended when I first decided to set it? So go back to, do I feel freer by not checking my phone from 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. or my email? Do I actually have that freedom? Do I feel more in control of my time, my energy? Is it doing what I had hoped it would do? Right? Is the closing your door and setting a specific time for your open door time, is that helping me be more productive? Is it helping empower my team to get their own work done? Like, whatever the reason for setting it is, you know, let it run its course for a little bit and then evaluate it. Is it working? Has it helped solve the challenge you were facing? And then you get to set more, right? The more comfortable you get setting boundaries, the more you can set. Again, because boundaries are not restrictive, this doesn't tighten us. It really does help us expand. So the more boundaries you have doesn't mean the more restricted you are. It does not mean this is a limitation, right? It's just a really great understanding of what you are okay with, what brings you joy, what helps you be productive at work. And for anyone who's a leader, and I said this to a group yesterday because I was getting a lot of resistance in the group yesterday about boundaries. And they kept tossing so many different excuses at me. And I just kept throwing creative solutions back at them. So it was it was fun. But what I said to them is, if not for you, do it for the people that you are leading. Many of us have been raised with a certain leadership style, or we were raised thinking, believing what we believe about boundaries. We've all had that leader or boss who was emailing us on their vacation, or who had that open door policy and then complained all the time with being busy. But I'm a good leader because you can come in and I'm always available. We've all had those experiences, and that has helped shape you to believe what you believe now. So, if not for you, which I do want you to do it for you, but I'd like to throw a little bit of guilt in there, incentive in there. Do it for the people who are following you. Show them that holding boundaries can actually be really beneficial. Do it for them so that they don't feel that when they're on vacation, they also have to check their email. You might send them an email while they're on vacation, but it does not mean they have to check it. Do they know that? Do they actually truly know that? Right? Do they know that when their door is closed, you're not just going to walk in? Once we can set our own boundaries, it actually also helps us be more respected or respectful of other people's boundaries. It actually, for me, makes life so much easier because I know exactly what to expect from people. I know that if I invite someone to do something and they have really strong boundaries and they say yes, like, awesome, they're all in. They're going to be there. Or can you take this meeting? Yes, I can. And I know that they're going to show up clear and present. So we're all leading other people, whether you know it or not. Other people are always watching as well. And they tend to follow people they are inspired by. So when you set boundaries, you were telling someone else that it's also okay for them to set boundaries. And for those who are leading other people, there is a difference of just saying, no, thank you, I'm not going to do that work. That's not a boundary. But respecting other people's boundaries or saying, you know what, I might send you an email after 5 o'clock. I by no means expect you to respond to it. And in all fairness, I don't want you to respond to it until the morning. I might send you an email because work comes up while you're on vacation. I'm asking you to leave it until you're back. Sometimes we have to help other people by giving them the permission they think they need to follow through on their boundaries. A little hack that I do because I'm an entrepreneur, I kind of get to work whenever I want to work. Sometimes I do a day on a Saturday and I just like plug through a bunch of emails and I do a bunch of work because that's when I have time available to do it. I delay delivery. I delay delivery on my emails so that people don't know that I'm working. So my clients don't think, oh, great, I can now all of a sudden call her and email her on the weekend and she's going to get back to me because I'm not. Or, oh, I'll just give her a quick call because she's working right now. I delay delivery. I do that for myself, but I also do it for them so that they're not getting emails on the weekend. They're getting it at a time and place when they have the capacity to now open them. So there's always a way. Um, there's always a way to work around that. Um, yeah, Holly, somebody's email signature that said, "I'm choosing to be working flexibly, but I do not expect a response." Yeah, I saw someone's email that just said, I recognize that my working hours may be different than yours. Please respond during your working hours." It's such an empowering feeling. So when you can start, really thinking about how you set boundaries, where you need them, and just be really intentional. Um, you know, yeah, Leslie, I just saw there that boundaries is like a kid's sport game with or without a referee. It's chaos if there's no rules or guidelines enforced because the kids don't know them, but there's so much freedom to really excel, yeah, when they are enforced. It's great. But I will say the two pieces, communicating them, holding them, reinforcing them, and it's just keep reinforcing them, keep going. So does anyone have any questions before we've got about 10 minutes left? Um, does anyone want to like throw out one of their challenges or any questions about setting boundaries specifically in the workplace or as a leader? Anything that you find you bump up against? Yeah, Jen, go ahead.
This isn't a particular this isn't an issue for me, but I imagine it could be for others trying to set boundaries, and it's making sure that you work in a culture that respects those boundaries, and I think you touched on that over and over again, really the importance of that, and I think as
Mhm.
leaders, And this happens a lot in my workplace. We talk about, okay, you know what? Let's try not to book meetings on Fridays, or you know what? Let's make sure the video camera is off if we don't need to have it on video camera. And also to the importance of tone. You know, I can
Mhm.
tell somebody I'm busy, and I can say it with great respect and kindness in my voice. It doesn't have to be a mean or a curt response. So I think tone is really important when we're
Yeah.
communicating those boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the communication. And that's why I really stress communicating your boundaries because a lot of us really struggle communicating effectively.
Mm,
And because again, we're telling ourselves so many stories on the inside of what people might be hearing. Um, we're playing both roles and we're trying to mind read and we're trying to anticipate. But sitting down with your leader or sitting down with your team and saying, "Hey, as a group, where do we think we need a boundary together, like a collective boundary? And if it is no meetings on Fridays, how are we going to implement?" Right? The implementation piece in everything is so key, right? You can read all the books, you can listen to all the podcasts, you can do all of the things, but the magic lives in implementation. So you can just say, we're not going to have meetings on Fridays. Okay, but what does that look like? How are we going to hold each other accountable so that we can mutually all respect that boundary? Are we just blocking our calendars, right? I have a Calendly, so anyone can like book in time with me just by clicking a button. So I have to be really intentional. Sometimes I just block full days so that no one can book in with me. So what is the implementation piece, right? That's why I talk about the out of office. What's your bounce back going to be? What's the sign on your door going to say? Like, hey, I'm not here. I'm working on something. Here's a sucker. Enjoy. Come back. Like, how are you going to do it that feels good for you? That you have communicated it effectively, and you're implementing it. Talk to your team, talk to your leader, maybe even say to them, I'm really struggling with accepting meetings. I keep meeting with donors after 5 p.m., or I keep meeting with clients, or well, after 5 p.m., and I'm late for dinner with my family every night, and I don't want to be late anymore. Can can you help me hold this boundary? Right? I think if someone came to me and said that, I would absolutely help them hold that boundary. So, but I don't know how important it is to someone until they share it with me. Right? I cannot read everyone's mind. There are people who really are in that phase of life where they just want to work evenings and weekends, and they're highly like that's just what they want to be doing. And that's okay too. That's why I say boundaries are so personal. We have to really start with how do we want to feel and how is this going to make our lives better? So, boundaries really are a tool that support you in your leadership, your life, and just helping you find that alignment. You can choose to use the tool or not. And, sometimes this realization that we are the creator of boundaries or the lack thereof can have us feeling self doubt or not enoughness. But I encourage everyone, as I do with my clients, to really flip that story. You know, ditch that belief that boundaries are restrictive and negative, and really focus in on your self leadership to change the story and see them as a helpful tool. They are so so helpful, and yeah, and just keep working with it. It's going to be constant reminding yourself and constant self-compassion. And, that's why I love doing this work. I love helping teams and leaders step into who they are as leaders because I see boundaries and really self leadership build so much more confidence, right? When you can show up confidently and with ease, you become so much better in your leadership. You're able to coach your team and really be a supportive role instead of distracted and overwhelmed leader. So just think about that and think about how you can use boundaries to create that ease. And if you ever need help, I'm always here. So please, well, I'm not always. There are times when I'm not on weekends, um, but I will always answer your email when I'm working. How about that? So I'm always open to chatting and helping people stay accountable for their boundaries. Um, always feel free to reach out to me. And if you're interested in learning more about the work that I do with teams or leaders specifically, there's a link that I will send out an email afterwards to book in with a call. But I do think that everyone is capable of setting boundaries and just keep going. Thanks everyone for coming today. And thanks for those listening in on the replay. If you ever have questions, just reach out. Bye.